Thank you so much, Karen. I'm so excited to be participating. And again, I wanted to take a kind of an atypical approach to the panel discussion. I just thought that I'd work with so many talented people in the Caribbean, in Africa, in the US. And I thought, well, maybe we could curate a conversational workshop as opposed to just having a panel. So this is an experiment, and I hope everyone is going to enjoy it. But the journey will have comments and insights from a number of industry professionals. It will also include some facts and figures that I've kind of peppered in just to hopefully illuminate what the marketplace is like. And then we'll have just some closing remarks of advice to some of the content creators that have been participating in the Pavillon Afriques. So with that, why don't we just get started on developing a global Black market for Black film and TV content?
Let's do it.
We are really at the beginning stages of African music, African stories, African drama, African movies, African media, African everything is going to continue to grow and develop.
I'm really excited to introduce our guest. James Makawa is a media pioneer and was one of the co-founders of the Afrika channel. Originally from Zimbabwe, but now living in Los Angeles. Michael Maponga is the CEO and founder of Afroland TV, a VOD platform. Originally from Zimbabwe, now living in Dallas. Karima Grant is an educator and a filmmaker and is founder and executive director of Imagination Africa. And she's originally from the US, but now living in Dakar, Senegal. Michael Armstrong, seasoned distribution executive, who's currently EVP Worldwide TV Licensing and Operations at Paramount Pictures, but was formerly the general manager at BET International, and he's in Los Angeles. Simmons, film and TV professional living in Barbados, CEO of Riveting Media. Douglas Holloway, he's had a long career in distribution at NBC Universal, USA Network, and has just launched 2 new OTT platforms, and he's in New York. Sola Fasehun is a talent agent and a manager and a producer at Hooligan Dreamers. She's in New York. Materre is an associate professor and director of the media management program at the New School, and is a distribution executive and has been curating film for over 25 years with her own series called Creatively Speaking. She's based in New York. Dave and Marcia Weeks, filmmaking team based in Barbados. And we'll learn about their latest film, Joseph, from Marcia, who wrote and directed the film. Let's start with the pillars of the media business and just to talk about how interdependent they are. Look at this stool. Well, you can see that you can only sit on it if all 3 legs are on the ground, and that's just the way it is in the media ecosystem. The content has to be there, the distribution and marketing has to be in place, and the revenue has to be in place in order for it all to work. And if one of those is not there, it's just not going to happen. My goal today is really to help content creators with film, TV, digital producers just take on a business focus as to how they market their content. Just think very much about how you are the product, if you will. So let's imagine that your film is like this East African beverage. It must be packaged correctly, must be priced correctly, and it has to be taken to market. It competes in that market with a whole lot of other beers. And in your case, your content is competing with a lot of other products that other people are putting out into the market. So let's unpack that market for content especially for Black content, and hear from those people that are actively involved in the ecosystem, either as producers, as distributors, or as executives that have been in it for a while. And it all starts with content.
The best thing about African and Black stories is that these stories are fresh. They haven't been played out in Hollywood. Hollywood is running out of stories. We've seen everything, right? That's why you have a lot of reboots. That's why you have a lot of sequels, prequels. They're running out of originality. We are in the golden age for African stories, and the stories are fresh in viewers' eyes. One of my advisors, James Makawa, always tells me,
think locally, but at the same time, too, you've got to think globally. There are enough stories out there that have got global significance and global attraction that any creator, whether you're white, black, brown, doesn't matter, you'll want to be part of that.
We're ready to tell those stories. We're ready to tell the stories where the plurality of our identities is going to go beyond just skin color. You know, it's not just that. It's, hey, wait, you know, we've got the complexity. I grew up in the US and really among beautiful communities in the US, but to a mother who was Senegalese and to a father whose family came from St. Lucia. So I think there's more stories like me.
I think the very existence of people of African descent being seen in lead roles helped to get and change minds and thoughts about who deserved to have that kind of primetime slot in any particular market. What I will say that I've learned over the years is it's less about the sheen and the production quality and the production control of the product and more about the authenticity. And so a local show, you know, could be shot in a market on an iPhone for all people cared if the actors and actresses in that marketplace were authentic to the cultural nuances in that market and resonated that authenticity through their performances. That might do better than a very high polished sitcom or drama out of the US with very big names.
When I graduated from college, like, I didn't know any big A-listers to put in my film. So are we preventing people, the next generation of filmmakers, from getting films done? And that's something that worries me, because I feel that, are we missing out on the next Spike Lee? You make a film, then what happens next? It's really important to have sales and distribution people on board, because that's going to help you get your film into theaters. It's going to help you get your film into festivals even, right?
But I still think distribution gets the short shrift. I don't think people still get that you have to have that embedded in your budgets. If you don't put it in your budget initially, it's never going to happen. Lots of examples of amazing films that never got the distribution that they should have because the investors pulled out after they put all the money into the production. They're like, oh, I'm not putting another dime in this film. It's like, yeah, but it's just going to sit there if you don't. And unfortunately, that's what happens. So until we can impress upon filmmakers, still need to hit this message. Distribution starts with the production process. It doesn't start when you finish the project. It starts at the beginning with everything else. And that has to be included in every single budget and every single line item that you put into your budget. If you don't do that, you could be sitting on a project that you've spent years and years and years, you know, getting in the can, so to speak, and, you know, then not being able to do anything with it.
So you really have to think, even before you make the film, what is your goal? What is your plan? What are you trying to do? Who do you want to target? You research all the people in sales and distribution and the films that they've done, so you know who to go to.
I think the problem is that most of the work that gets exported is not the work from independent filmmakers. It's the more mainstream Hollywood type work, and that's all that people know. But once they see an alternative kind of perspective coming from independent filmmakers, people are thrilled. People are overwhelmed. They totally can identify with the stories, regardless of where I am in the world. I remember being in Barbados and standing in front of a group of students, starting to talk about daughters, and I realized midstream, I don't have to explain things to them.
Ask on us. You think you can cross over to the mainland and run away from it?
Never forget who we is and how far we done come.
This is their culture. I'm not standing in front of a predominantly white audience where I have to explain cultural messages and iconic images and what does the bottle tree mean, and those kinds of things, and it hit me like mid-sentence, and it was a totally different experience from there on in.
So I think the world is changing, and I think as a result, our needs and our desires for not only representation, but for quality content, for content specifically in our case that can accompany children, Black children.
Loho yaka.
Loho yaka.
Lève-toi, Rama, l'école commence. Hé, lève-toi, Rama, il est temps de retourner à l'école. C'est l'heure de voir tous nos amis et nos maîtresses. Je ne veux pas aller à l'école, ça sera trop différent.
Rama and Aisha comes from, for about 11 years, I've founded and been leading a children's museum here in Dakar, Senegal. And we've been working really around children's well-being and really producing change makers. And so we've been working, our way of working has been working with the ecosystem of creatives that have been here in Senegal, and very often with people who've come to visit from other countries. And so the series was born. I myself, my origins are as a children's book writer. So I've published books for children in the US, and I came to Senegal, and actually the beginning of our children's museum was based in a book project. So it's almost like it was 360. It came right back for us to be able to say, okay, we can write content for young children that can deal with young children's interests, but can be completely and utterly informed by West African realities.
What's actually really surprising is, and this is because of my ignorance, that I didn't even understand this market, but I'll start off in Brazil, right? The Brazilian country has this the biggest diaspora outside of Africa. Brazilian content is consumed aggressively on the African continent. Right, and this was a surprise to me because my first thought is, well, the language barriers, right? Obviously, they don't understand the Brazilian culture, and then it dawned on me that again, it's always good stories that are able to travel, right? And us as the global Black community, we are now living in an age where, and I hate to use this word, but it's very relevant. We're living in the woke age. Right now, our people are wanting to discover different roots, right? We now want to connect with where our ancestors came from, right? So you find not only just Africans in the diaspora, but African Americans watching content from Africa, watching content from Brazil, watching content from wherever the Black diaspora is, wanting to connect with our brothers and sisters.
And there's a huge Black audience to connect with. There's over 1.7 billion people of African descent living in North America, South America, and Central America, in the Caribbean, in Europe, and of course on the continent. This is a huge market. But since we can't discuss all these markets today, let's just look at the statistics and the demographics of the US market. So I took the liberty of listing most of the sources that I used, just so that it kept the slides a little bit simpler. The Horowitz Research Company did some primary research among US Black TV viewers and found that 66% of them wanted more shows that showcase Black cultures from around the world. This is just telling me that the content that's being produced in Africa, in the Caribbean, and in the rest of the diaspora is not just of interest to people from there, but really of interest to all Black consumers and all Black viewers that might be living in the United States. Well, that makes sense because African Americans watch a lot of television. As you can see from this chart, the average Black household in the US watches 6 hours and 37 minutes per day, compared with all TV households in the US, which are watching 4 hours and 46 minutes. But there's a real hidden market in the US, and that's really underserved. And we would be very receptive to seeing the content from Africa and the Caribbean. Because as you can see, 2 in 10 Blacks in the US have family ties to Africa and the Caribbean. This means that's immigrants and their descendants that are living in the US. So that means there's almost 8 million people who are coming from Africa or the Caribbean and their descendants living in the US out of the 42 million total Black population. This is huge. And as you can see by this chart, the split between Africa and the Caribbean is about even. Interestingly, Jamaicans make up the largest percentage of this foreign-born population living in the US, followed by Haitians, followed by Nigerians, and the list is long, so I'll stop there. But let's hear more from our guest about just what can work, what kind of content really is out there that can make a difference.
Joseph was our 7th film. And Joseph is a story of, I guess, a Caribbean man from Jamaica, but it could be any Caribbean man. He's maroon and been told all his life that his heritage is in Africa, specifically the Ashanti tribe. And so when he gets to a certain age, he's become a doctor like his father. And he decides, listen, I am going to, I'm going to Ghana. I'm going to visit the Ashanti tribe. I'm going to go and connect with my roots. And that's when the trouble started.
Here's the 6 years of torture. And finally, freedom. Yeah.
Joseph, you've done all you could. Deal with it.
Joseph, promise me you will go.
A lot of the things I read about Africa freaks me out.
Okay, I keep telling you, you're reading the wrong books.
There's some things that are just non-negotiable. And that's the use of bush medicine in my hospital. Never gonna happen.
That's what Granddad made his living from in a compound. And we know he was a master at this.
You bringing the bush in the hospital?
There's enough.
No, we are a family of professional doctors. Let's all learn.
Everyone walks through these doors. They're expecting a miracle.
Preserving the family legacy is also your responsibility.
You are descendant of Nani, many mighty warriors.
Granddad was saying that it was...
Granddad, every time you open your mouth, his name come out of it.
You know what I had to endure under that man's hands?
So because of that, you're going to stop me from living the life that I want to live? Hell no! I'm done with pleasing you and everybody else.
I hate you!
What are you looking at?
Okay.
You should stay away from me. I'm poison, Joseph.
Is that ganja smoking Rasta girl, right?
Look, Mom, even if it is, it's still my decision. How do you know my name?
Where do you see my son? You're like a candle that cannot be hidden under a bushel.
Where are you going?
To look for my son?
I'm begging you! I'm begging.
No, pass out.
I'm on a journey to reconnect with my ancestry.
Many more will find their way home.
May the souls of my 2 heroes rest in peace. I'll be there in Ghana with you. Yeah?
That's not how we talk.
That's how you talk.
So there's a lot of family drama in the film, which very much is like what happens to us. We're one family, we're cousins.
cousins with the Americans and the Africans, and so we see the way I wrote the film. If you see that kind of tension within their family, it's what happens in the wider African family in Africa and its diaspora. So it's a beautiful film with a lot of principles woven and teaching woven into this beautiful story that I'm sure is going to have a lot of people, shedding a tear at some part in there. It's going to connect with you because it's a longing inside of us of wanting to connect to Africa, and that's what Joseph does. It's a connection. It's like a homecoming, and so it's just a beautiful story, and it's one where everybody finds something in there.
It's all about the story. Whether it's me or the big studios, it's all about the story. You can have the slickest package, but if it doesn't have a compelling story, then you're really not going to get much traction. And when I say compelling story, the best compelling stories, regardless of the source, the content topic or the matter of the content, is really those pieces of content that evoke an emotion. It can be a good emotion, it can be a bad emotion, it can be anger, it can be sympathy, but the stories that have some kind of emotion connection are those that play the best.
Well, you see, the people that have been real smart about this, let me take Netflix as an example. Okay? Netflix has been really smart about what they've done globally. And they've gone local, global. Okay, and they've gotten rid of the whole myth behind, audiences won't like stuff with subtitles. Are you kidding me? Is the story good? Is it well written? Is it entertaining? Does it have emotional value? Does it give me those aha moments? Oh, I didn't know. And it's like, oh, I can't wait to see the next episode. So that's what's out there. And the guys at Netflix understand that.
The big issue that you have with the big players, whether it's NBC or Hulu or Netflix or Amazon, is getting through all of the gatekeepers. And that is the most difficult part, is without having an agent or a lawyer that can really give you entree, it's really hard to come in off the street. And unless you have, a connection there, if you know somebody, that always works. But if you don't have one of those three things going for you, it's really, really hard to cut through and be discovered.
When I was at BET International, for us, the winning prize was to get platforms, in the case of the time period, which was late 2007, early 2008, it was cable platforms, to launch BET channels in markets outside the United States to see mostly what was Black American shows with Black American talent. And over time, to evolve to use that as a jumping off point and a platform to bring local talent to the fore. And we did that, and we did it in a number of different ways. I think we created our own opportunities to bring that talent to viewers. So the appetite really wasn't there from a buyer perspective in a big way. We sold and licensed some of our bigger shows, but generally speaking, we had to build it ourselves and get the distribution to present the content. And in many cases, when we did that, we saw a great deal of people that really were surprised at how great these shows were that we were sending out into the world, how relatable the talent was.
We are creating stories, trying to acclimate to the westernized style of stories. Right? We're creating stories for Hollywood and not creating stories for Africans. Because one thing is, if we value our stories, the world is then going to value them. The perfect example is what you see coming out of Bollywood, out of the Asian film industries. They didn't try to acclimate to what Hollywood was doing, but they made the world love their culture.
Well, I think on the media side, it is crucial And it's critical that people from within the diaspora and the Africans themselves take ownership of their own imagery, of their own stories. Because if it's up to the hunter, to tell the story, the lion doesn't stand a chance.
We know Comcast is one of the biggest paid TV companies here in the United States. They control the airways, they have the advertisers, they have the distribution, right? These are all the things that we as African people, the global Black diaspora, we lack, right? We have incredible stories. We write and we share incredible stories amongst each other. But what we lack in our film and TV industry is the distribution. We do not control the channels of distribution.
So the distribution models in the US are changing. And one reason is that the pandemic has really changed our habits, all our media habits. The pandemic has really forced everyone to, as I put it in these words, pause, reflect, and reorient. As we all know, the major studios went from this to this, coming to America, premiering on Amazon and not at the AMC theater. While we're going to go back to being in theaters, I don't know that we're going to go back to it in the same way. And I think the industry is responding by saying, I'll hedge my bets by putting this on a streaming platform and a movie theater, but simultaneously. That was unheard of just a year and a half ago. In fact, in one study, it found that during the pandemic, 37% of US consumers decided to drop their cable, or as we say here, cut the cord. That's really affecting the ecosystem. It's affecting the way that these companies are interacting with the consumer. And what James said was really spot on. According to Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, they're seeing more people consume more content from all over the world. And that means that they're watching content, as some have said, that's subtitled or dubbed. There's this opportunity to bring in content from Africa, to bring in content from the Caribbean that may not have been shot originally in English. But here's something you may not know. That the content recommendation system that Netflix uses is very efficient. And it drives 80% of the viewing, meaning that the algorithm picks up that you've watched something and then it actually suggests something else for you to watch that's very similar. What does that mean for you as a content creator? Well, that means that you don't have to come up with the best, new, original, nobody's ever seen the idea before. You just need to come up with a good idea, a good concept that's very much like what is already out there. And you'll get into that algorithm and you'll get selected as the next option when somebody's watching Netflix. Just something to think about as you are putting your content together and your distribution plan. I hope this all makes some sense. Well, this is representing the old rabbit-eared television, which most of you probably don't know anything about, but the origins of TV with the broadcast networks, with the local television stations, beaming the signal over the air. While those days are somewhat gone, they're still in existence, and most of those channels are being rebroadcast through cable or through satellite. And they're still important. They're just difficult to crack. It's difficult to get connected with a studio that's already connected with the network so that you can get your deal done. It's difficult to get noticed if you're not living in LA and maybe having that lunch or that coffee with somebody who is connected to the networks. But it's still an option. It's something that as content creators, you want to think about how you can avail yourself of that distribution mechanism. But beyond linear television, we have satellite like Dish and Direct. We have cable companies, that we mentioned Comcast and Charter. And then we have the IPTV, Internet Protocol TV, which is now starting to really take the place of those previous two because now people are looking at things through the internet. And then where everyone is focusing on these days, the OTT TV, over-the-top television, a platform that allows you to use the internet to get more channels and more opportunities to see content that's not coming through cable or satellite or over-the-air broadcast. So in this OTT world, one fact just popped out at me. There are over 300 streaming services available in the US. What's good about that? You've got lots of options. What's bad about that is that you've now got all this competition of people that are trying to fight for the attention of the consumer, and you've got to now figure out what's my strategy to get people to not only accept my content, but then to get the audiences to watch it. So let me break down the over-the-top market for you, just in the event that you're thinking about trying to approach one of these streaming services. There are three distinct ways that you can deal with them. There's TVOD, TVOD, which is transactional, like iTunes. So that way, when somebody looks at your content, you get a revenue split from that you share with iTunes. Your ability to go out there and generate an audience is based on the fact that iTunes has got 100 million people that they talk to every day, and the fact that you can send out your own mailing and let people know, hey, go to iTunes or go to one of the transactional platforms and look at my content. Then there's SVOD, SVOD, subscription video on demand, which most of us are familiar with. It's Netflix, it's Disney Plus. It's the ability for you to do a deal with one of these companies, have them acquire your content, and then they go out and remarket it as part of a package, and people spend, $10 or $15 or $20 US a month, but you're not sharing in that revenue because they've already given you some money. Then there's AVOD, advertiser supported, and this is a newer kid on the block, where again your content's being acquired for some amount of money, but those companies, instead of getting it directly from the consumers, they're getting their money from advertisers, national advertisers who are embedded in the content, and these companies then are able to get advertising dollars from them to support their platforms. And I put a little red hybrid in there because you have platforms like Hulu where you can watch it with commercials, so it's advertiser, or you can watch it just as a subscription, but there are a few of those that are out there in the marketplace as well. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, so which one do I do? Which one do I do first? Which one? And I guess my pick is do something transactional, then go to SVOD, then go to advertiser supported like the Peacock or the YouTubes. Can't take the amount of time to go into that now, but I think there's some real compelling reasons to follow that line. But this conversation would not be complete if we did not talk about the economics. Remember, at the end of the day, this is a business. So let's look at some more numbers that you may or may not know. Let's go back to the reference of how large the Black consumer market is in the US, just to focus on this market. The total buying power of all US Blacks is $1.3 trillion. That's right, that's trillion with a T. That means that if all the Blacks in the US were a country, the amount of money that's being generated among us would be larger than the gross domestic product of Mexico. Okay, hope you're getting that. African American spending larger than Mexico's economy. Let that sink in. If we go back to our discussion of the foreign-born Black audience and their descendants, then conservatively, this segment has a buying power of just over $200 billion. That's just the 20% of the 1.3 trillion that we just looked at. $200 billion circulating among people of African and Caribbean descent living in the US, looking for content, looking for stories. And very important to this conversation is advertising. Advertisers spend $3.9 billion to reach Black consumers. In other words, there are numerous potential sponsors out there who could use your content to reach the overall US population of Blacks, or use their dollars to specifically zero in on the foreign-born segment. who would have preferences of products and services that your content would be able to connect with immediately. Now, I will add that while that's a big number, it's only 1.6% of all the advertising dollars that are being spent in the US, which that's another webinar that we'll do at a different time to talk about that inequality.
We're talking to a number of sponsors specifically to talk to them about producing and supporting us in producing the following episodes. A priori, as we say, we have, televisions that are like, yes, but come with the sponsors. So that's really what we're doing is we're really right now finding good matches for the sponsorship, because the other big challenge, of course, is that you're not trying to just get anybody to underwrite children's programming, right? We also want to find sponsors that are harmonizing with not only our view, but the principles that we produced this series with.
So we ourselves have to be the marketers. We ourselves have to try to get out there. So that's what we pretty much have done. We ourselves have put on our gloves, and we've gone out there and tried to market the films. With this one, Joseph, again, this one, as I said, it was during COVID. But from our home and using the online resources, we researched and pretty much working it. We just worked it. Whatever channels we could find and look for, we did that. Speaking with people, it's important to network with people, to talk to people. And in this case, it wasn't necessarily someone who was in the film industry, but someone who knew somebody. So we were actually in Ghana for the premiere, at the end of the premiere, after the premiere, and we were talking with someone there and, letting them know what we would like to do. And they said, but I know someone who works at AMC, pretty high up in AMC. So they sent an email and they told us to follow the process. And we did. We followed the process. We approached AMC, wrote them an email, sent them the trailer, and then we set up a meeting with them, explained to them, our objectives with the film, that it premiered in Ghana. We went through, all the promotional gadgetry that you can, whatever promotional arsenal you have, and invited them to see the film. So they watched the film and said, yes, we would carry this film. Coming out of that premiere, it cost us to get there. We had to pay for our food, the whole 9 yards. So it cost us. But coming out of that, that was a great marketing tool where we were able to capture footage there. We have lots of footage from that premiere, lots of comments, reviews, and those are tools that you use in your arsenal for distribution, for promotion, and they're still being used to this day. So you have to be prepared to sacrifice to get something back.
We tried to get some investors. We got one or two because there's still a lack of confidence, within the Caribbean in terms of the business space. And so we are still working on that. They'll clap for you and they're happy and they're excited. But am I going to put my money there? So where the money should come from, we really need investors to invest in it, to believe in the industry.
That's where this gets really interesting. In the Caribbean, funding is non-existent. Non-existent. It's not there at all. And if you can't self-finance your projects or pull it all together on the finance, end of it, you're it's not possible. But we see a lot of other opportunities there as well, because the problem is within the Caribbean. I know for sure, we look at a U.S. model. We shouldn't be looking at a U.S. model. Look at our own models. Work out our own models which will work. Black people want content too. Why are we going to look at a Hollywood model that, doesn't even, take us into, We have to look at this whole thing different. I think we need to build that network up where we bring trusted people in. And you get a recommendation through someone that would have had to work with them, because working blind is hard in this industry. Working blind is very hard in this industry. We did it 13 years ago in Barbados. We created a Barbados Film and Video Association. I've just gone back onto the board, and is to bring together all the players in the market, find out their skills and work together. That's the first step, because you do that locally in your market, then you can step from there. You need to come together within your market.
You may have a unique voice, but it may actually be a 1 + 1 = 3 if you work with someone else to bring it to market. You may have a really great technical skill, whereas someone else may have a really great editing skill to kind of say, hey, we can make this scene 1/3 of the length with more impact if we just edit these words. So co-produce, pool your money together, bring it to screen, and eventually there'll be enough for everyone to have their own story.
My approach to the industry was always kind of something I took from my father, to be a jack of all trades and master of most. And so, you know, I went and got my MBA. I don't think everybody needs to get an MBA, but to have business, some kind of legal understanding of contracts, some kind of business acumen of finance, and some kind of negotiating skills, which you can pick up just to get a working knowledge of what's going on so that people can't take advantage of you.
You know, the landscape is changing, but the Black experience in every single part of the value chain is still lacking. And until we have people on the legal side, on the production side, behind the camera, writers, I don't care if it's for comedy or drama or live events, that whole system needs to change. Now, the great equalizer is the internet. You know, back in 2005, the internet wasn't working. Not from the vantage point of being able to send an email or just send text. That was working fine. But the distribution of video, it wasn't working. And so if you fast forward to today, the opportunities are infinite. And so this is a really exciting time for for a do-over.
So when it comes to distribution, one thing that African filmmakers have to understand is that this is a marathon, right? Because they have also adopted the mindset of the westernized studio release distribution, where they release a movie and it grosses millions of dollars in one weekend. So when African filmmakers produce something and they release it, they're expecting the same outcome. It's totally wrong, right? For us, right, for independents, people not in the Hollywood system, in the studio system, this is a marathon, right? You want to make sure that you understand your distribution schedule prior to developing or producing the movie.
I think as much as you can to really put a polished trailer together of what your project is about, because right now everybody is so visual. The fundraising trailer is probably going to be the thing that brings me money most immediately. So how much time do you spend on writing as opposed to trying to get this really polished trailer together?
I would like to say, you know, stick to your guns. Don't let people shoot your ideas down. You know, if you believe in them, stand behind them and fight for them, and work hard and work smart. And networking, there is no substitute to knowing as many people in this industry as you possibly can. Build your own brand. You need a brand. And in today's marketplace, you know, you can use social media to develop your brand so that, you know, people know who you are and what you're all about.
Well, we've covered a lot of structure of the industry. We've talked about strategies and tactics. We've talked a little bit about what you as a content creator or somebody who's actually acquiring content, what you can actually do to zero in on an underserved market in the US. But let me amplify some of the comments that were made and bring us to a close. So just how do you network? If you're watching this, then you got the memo. You need to be present. You need to be there. You need to gather with like-minded people You need to gather with people that are in decision-making roles that can have an influence and an impact on what you're doing. You can do that virtually now. You can visit some of these conferences and these festivals, even though they may be thousands of miles away, but you can make a connection, put something in the chat, have somebody connect with you, but there are ways now to do that. Going to markets, going to festivals, a lot has been talked about, with the need for that. But at the end of the day, you really do want to try to make human contact if you can, human to human contact. Go to some of these festivals if you can. Connect with somebody on LinkedIn, the professional networking platform. And then don't forget, there's something called a telephone. Pick up the phone, see if you can find a number of somebody, and see if you can make that connection. Leave that voicemail that lets them know how passionate you are about helping them reach the target audience that your content will connect with. How do you stay informed? I know everyone reads a lot of the trades that talk about the aesthetics of the content, that talk about the storylines, but you really want to make sure that you're reading the same journals and the same media sources as those executives that you're trying to influence. So you want to read variety, absolutely, but you also want to read Advertising Age. And you don't have to go out and buy subscriptions. A lot of these are available if you just bookmark them, or use a student rate, or find a friend, or find a few friends, but to collaborate and get a subscription. But read and make sure that you're bringing in this information on a regular basis so that you're current, you're knowledgeable. And when you make those connections from your networking, people know that you're in the business and you're not just looking from a creative standpoint, but you're looking from a business standpoint. My final thought about why I'm truly so passionate about this concept of taking content from Africa and the Caribbean and diaspora and bicycling it around, it's really very personal. I'm first generation Barbadian parents, married to a woman from Senegal with roots in the Gambia and Mali. And this picture is from our wedding in Dakar, where my grandmother came from Barbados and my wife's great aunt from the Gambia, and they just sat and talked. And it was then that I realized that there was a need for us to connect, because they were telling each other stories that they could relate to about cooking, about raising kids, and that's what needs to be circulated among us, living in the region, living in North America, living in Europe, but it also needs to be shared with the world, because that's the only way that we're really going to be able to have our presence and our stories appreciated, is when they are circulated to the world. So I hope you've enjoyed this time that we've spent together. We've heard from a lot of people that have, I think, a lot to say in their own lanes, but hopefully you've seen how the lanes intersect and that you walk away with a nice appreciation from content creators, from people involved in distribution, and people involved in festivals. So with that, I will give my final words, which is for you to live long and prosper. And I'll turn it back to our last guest to wrap things up.
Don't give up. Don't give up. There's so many of us over on this side. Those of you in Africa, you're listening on this side. We go on Netflix and we watch your movies. We watch your movies and we are hungry for them, and we learn about Africa that way. So don't give up. Keep doing them. Caribbean filmmakers, don't give up. The diaspora, oh my goodness, they are hungry for our work. They're hungry for our work. Keep at it and keep improving. Keep the production value high as much as we can, because we have to stretch that dollar. But keep going, keep pressing. Keep knocking at that door. It's going to open. And things are happening, and I believe as this market expands, then we're going to feel it, filmmakers. We're going to feel the energy of that coming through that market. So let's keep going, everybody. We got to keep going. One big family, Africa and the African diaspora. We're running together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. That was fantastic. And thank you for putting all of that together. And as you can see, the chat is on fire. People really enjoyed that. And there's so much positive feedback that's been shared. So I just thought to give a moment for question and answers. So if anyone would like to ask a question live, just raise your hand using the raise hand Zoom function there, and we can address your questions. Currently, there is one question from Happiness Mpase, and Happiness says, hello everyone. How do I approach networking in the new normal as a content creator when we do not necessarily get to meet in person? So, Mark, what are your words on that?
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining and for staying through the entire experience. That's a very good question. I think the opportunity is greater now to be in touch than it might have been pre-COVID. What do I mean by that? We've rewritten the rules. No one is in their office. No one has a lot of people screening their calls. We're now on a one-on-one basis. So the more that you can now start to link in with people, join sessions like this, talk to them in the chat, it's acceptable because we've somewhat changed the game. And all of these experiences, all these opportunities to connect, like the Pavillon Afriques at Cannes, but there are other festivals and conferences that are coming up. The price of entry is actually very affordable for most people. So your opportunity to get out there and now, get in front of people by using the digital age is greater than I think it's ever been. And I think that's one of the things that we will hopefully think of as the silver lining that's come out of what we've been through this year and a half, is that the standards have somewhat changed, the norms have somewhat changed, and people are a lot more, I think, accepting and inviting of direct communication, because we really haven't been able to see each other. My email was put in the chat. For anyone that wants to connect, we will definitely at the appropriate time release this for non-commercial use, of course. But if there are no other questions, then I again want to thank Karine Barclay and all the team at the Pavillon Afriques. It's an incredible initiative, and I'm so looking forward to being on La Cosette next year with all of you on the call and all the friends that you can bring with you. So I guess with that, I'll say merci bien et à bientôt, j'espère. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Mark.
We've covered a lot. And if you have questions or would like to just start some dialogue, please find me on LinkedIn or email me at mark@onyxgm.com. That's mark@onyxgm.com. But before we go, I have to really say that this could not have happened without two really talented individuals that helped to pull this all together. Former students of mine at the New School, Taylor Alexis Skillard and Carly Bauer, who really did more than I could have expected to pull all of this together from a production and an administrative aspect. So I want to just say to them, I'm wishing them the best of luck. And anyone who wants to be in touch with them to give them a job, just reach out to me. But they're the best, and this was a real collaborative effort.